realness of people.
Okay.
It's like, oh man, really? I didn't know that. Even if it were like, you love animals, and people would go, oh man, that's awesome. Here, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It
Mm-hmm.
might or might not work in that way.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay. So I have your bio from your website, and I'll just read a little bit of that. And I'm going to talk about how we met. And we met in person in 2011, the
Mm-hmm.
first time. And then you were in Fargo with me in 2013. I'm not sure if you were here other times or not.
I've been to Fargo several times in my life.
Okay. So we can
Yeah.
talk about Fargo a little bit. We can talk about Florida a little bit. And it'll just be a conversation. I've got all but one of your books right here.
Oh.
And the only one I don't have is one I loaned out, Endless
Which one?
Referrals,
Ah.
which is the one that started it for me with you.
Yeah.
So we'll just go. It's very casual, it's very conversational.
I'm fine. I'm just going to follow your lead, my friend.
Awesome.
So don't
Awesome.
worry
Awesome.
about
Okay.
me.
Awesome.
And I've got us down for 30 minutes.
Yep. That's fine. Yep.
Perfect.
All right. So here we go. Hi, everybody. It's Jody, and welcome to episode 46 of Circle Up and Get Real. And today I am so honored to be graced by the presence of my friend, and I'm going to say my friend Bob Burg, who is an author and a speaker. And there's a lot I can tell you about his bio, which we'll get into, and I'll also put in the show notes. But Bob is someone I've followed for a long time based on his first book, Endless Referrals, because Bob, that opened up a whole new way of connecting with people in business for me that I hadn't thought about before. So that book was so great. But now lately, and by the way, if we're watching this on video, I have Bob's books right here. And I love these books because his influence is less about what you can get and more about what you can give. And if we have that mindset of the go-giver, I think our lives are exponentially enhanced, ourselves and those people we influence. So, Bob, welcome to Fargo from Florida.
Thank you, Jody. First, always great speaking with you. I just always love seeing you in my Facebook timeline and getting to connect with you and follow your career that way. And you're really one of the true leaders and true gifts. And I love that you're from Fargo because one of my greatest friends of all time is from Fargo, and I've gotten to be there to speak several times, and so it's always a great memory for me.
I'm so grateful. Well, I first met you in 2011 when I heard you were speaking in Minneapolis, which is about a 4-hour drive for me. And that was not a very big event. If you remember that event in Minneapolis, there were, a few people there, but it felt very intimate. And the one thing I remember from the first time I met you in person was your amazing ability to remember people's names.
Oh, that's when I was doing that at the beginning of the programs. And it's just a system. It's a matter of having a system. And the reason I did that, and what I would do is I'd before the event, as people were having coffee and so forth, I'd walk around, introduce myself, and usually about 30, 35, 40 people, whatever it happened to be. I would meet them, get their names, and then as I started my talk, I'd have everybody stand up who I'd gotten to, as long as I'd gotten to hear your name, and I'd go around the room calling back their names. And I might miss one or two, but got most of them correct. And I did that really only to demonstrate, because I had a horrible memory especially when it came to people's names and even faces. Most people say I'm good with faces, just not with names. I wasn't even good with faces. And so I learned a system, and I define a system as simply the process of predictably achieving a goal
Hmm.
based on a logical and specific set of how to principles. In other words, if it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A. And eventually you got the decided or the desired results of B. So I had bought back then, and this is long before we had met, and this is, I guess, showing my age, but I had bought a cassette tape album on how to remember names and faces. And that's and I went through it and I learned it, and took a weakness of mine, which was not being able to remember people's names, and turned it into a strength. And that's why I did that. It's not because my memory is naturally any better than anybody else's. It's just that if you have a methodology of doing something, you can generally do it.
Well, and I loved that because however you were doing it, to me, it made me feel as if I was connected with you. And I
Hmm.
think I watched the people around me because I was really amazed at that. And I watched people around me who felt that you knew them and you cared about them. And that process, I think, it works so well in business if we do
Sure.
things genuinely instead of only for that result. And I always felt from you
Yeah.
that it was always genuine.
Well, it is, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So you've been in, well, you've been doing what you've been doing for a long, long time, writing books, speaking. How did you get to that point, Bob? What was it that got you to be who you are today?
Well, I began in sale. No, before sales. I began in broadcasting. I
Oh,
was actually a radio sports guy, and then a TV news guy. And my TV job was with a very small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States, and I really, Jody, was not very good at it. I mean, I could read the news, but I certainly wasn't a reporter. And I kind of fell into sales. I like to say I graduated into sales.
uh-huh.
The problem that I had, though, was that I had no background in selling, and so I in the company where I started, we'll just say their training was negligible
Mhm.
at
Okay.
best.
Yes.
And and so I really floundered, and until one day I was in a bookstore, and again we're talking almost 40 years ago now, and I got I saw a couple books on selling, which I didn't even know those things existed.
Mm.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Now
Mhm.
that's just not a big deal.
Right.
Back then they just weren't as prevalent. And I remember picking up a book by Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar. I brought those home and I started studying. I mean, I immersed myself in them. I didn't read them, I devoured them. So every night after work, I would read and highlight and take notes and dog ear the pages and yellow sticky notes and, and practice and practice and practice. And within a few weeks, my sales really began to do well.
Mm.
And again, it's just again, it's an example of having a system,
Mhm.
that when you have a methodology for doing something, you can get from point A to point B. Now, from learning the selling aspect, you begin to understand that it's a lot more than just the how to's, that it has a lot more to do with what you feed your brain with. And I started getting all the positive development, the personal development books, and the same ones that you probably have in your library, the How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the Magic of Thinking Big, and As a Man Thinketh, and all the great, right? And because what we know is that our success is really an inside job, and it manifests itself outwardly, but
Mhm.
it's really about learning and developing. But there's also something else I think we have to do, and this is where, when you talk about authenticity, as I know you do, and being real comes in, that all the techniques and strategies and learning, that's all great, that's very important, but we have to be congruent with our values.
Mhm.
I can learn from the great Zig Ziglar, but I can't be Zig Ziglar.
Mm.
I mean, I can imitate him well because I listened to his tapes like 40,000 times, and, so, I read his book, listened to his tapes, went to his seminar,
Yeah.
eventually appeared on stage. I mean, so all those great. I can do a great imitation of Zig, but I
Right.
can't be Zig.
Right. Well, he
And
got that down. He had that down pretty well. It's not like anybody could be Zig.
right. And we shouldn't want to be anyone else, but we can learn from everyone.
Right.
So, learn from adapt their wisdom, but don't try and adopt their personalities.
Ooh, that's good.
There's
That's
only one Zig. There's one Tom, there's one Jody, there's one, and I can learn from Jody Bach, but I can't be Jody Bach.
Mhm.
It wouldn't
Mhm.
work for me.
Yeah.
And so, but I can learn from you. So I think we can learn from everyone, but we need to stay congruent with our values, and we need to always tie that learning into our authentic core.
Mhm. So when you talk about your values, how were your values developed, Bob? What was your, when you look back now, did you always have that interest in learning or did you learn to be a learner?
Both actually. I think our values are first shaped by our parents, by our upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television. They all start to take a rep, but our first, by the time we're toddlers, our basic belief systems, if you will,
Mhm.
are pretty much etched in stone. And for a lot of people, we grow up with an unconscious, being run by an unconscious operating system. Those
Mhm.
are our beliefs. And we often think that these beliefs are truths, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not.
Mhm.
Our beliefs, we could say, are subjective truths.
Mhm.
They're the truth as we understand the truth to be, but it's not always. So at a certain point, if we can be open to questioning our premises
Mhm.
and asking why we believe a certain way, and sometimes, by the way, the way we were taught to believe in something is correct,
Mhm.
and other times it isn't.
Mhm.
I mean, I was very fortunate. I had great parents, and so I'm forever. To me, my biggest privilege is that I grew up with two parents who love each other and who love their children. So
Right.
and so those are core values, and those are so. Um, but I also learned different. Um, I don't know if I can say different values. Well, let's go back for a second because I think your question's a great question. So my dad, who was really self-educated, when he grew up, it wouldn't even be a thought to have gone to college,
Mm.
but he was he was always reading.
Mm.
Okay, so I think I gathered a love of reading at that time, just watching my dad always reading. But I read books that weren't necessarily personal development books when I
Mm.
was a kid. Okay, so I was always reading sports books and
Mhm.
different things. It was after I got, and I was not a good student in school, by the way,
Mm.
but my schooling really began when I got in sales. And but I think the good thing is once I realized that the books I needed to read were the personal development books,
Mhm.
the example and the high value I held for reading just from watching my dad, I think that allowed me to then really enjoy the process because now I got to learn something totally different.
Interesting. So personal development as a genre, did that occur to you early in your life, or was it when you got into sales?
Yeah, and so I think the sales. So, and here's the funny thing, because again, I go back to my dad and mom. They always valued when their kids made the effort
Mm.
to do something right. So they were always supportive. They weren't the type of parents who, if I struck out in little league, they weren't the kind of parents that
Mm.
came down on their kid for that. It was, did you go up to the plate, keep your eye on the ball, take the swing, and they were supportive as could be. And to me, when I see parents at little league games and other sporting events actually acting horribly, yelling at the umpires or the coaches, I'm just amazed that that's even allowed to happen. When I was growing up, you didn't have that as much. Like you still had some of it,
Mm.
but with me, whether it was school, sports, whatever I was doing, it was always a matter of effort. Did you make the effort? And if you made the effort, that was what counted, because I think
And
they knew the results were more likely to.
oh,
You know,
that's a great point. That the results were more likely to come from the effort. And your point about parents, boy, they are sure showing their kids examples, aren't they, by who they're being at those little league games.
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
And that gets conditioned and programmed into us, as you said earlier, when we're young, very young. And that becomes the way we think is true. And you said
Yeah.
sometimes it is true, but sometimes it's not true.
Yeah. So so there was always the idea of, do your best and,
Mhm.
hold that as a high value. But it really wasn't until I got in sales that I
Mhm.
learned this new world of personal development
Yeah.
that, was out there for me. Wow. I mean, there's like wisdom from the ages that I didn't even know existed.
I know, that's so true. And there, some of the best lessons I'm learning even now, I can go back and back and back. You mentioned "As a Man Thinketh." I mean, that's what, the early 1900s,
Oh, sure,
and
sure.
you go back before that and back before that too.
Oh, absolutely. There's a big thing now about Stoics, but
Yeah.
a lot of people are studying the Stoics, and of course Ryan Holiday has really kind of brought that into the mainstream with some of his excellent books. But I love studying the Stoics,
Yeah.
and I mean it's amazing what these people knew and how they expressed it, and how it's just as, so principles don't change. Principles are timeless, universal laws that, and that's why when we talk about success, and success covers many areas. There's financial success, there's physical, financial, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social, relational, probably a dozen other types. But the universal laws for such tend to work across the board. Strategies differ depending upon what you're looking to accomplish, techniques and tactics and all those things. But when you stay with when you learn the principles, which is really what the Stoics were teaching, um, the rest of it seems to come along.
Right. So when you got into sales and did, started learning all these things and wrote your book, it was Endless Referrals your first book?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me how that happened. How did you shift from being a salesperson to now becoming an author and teaching? To me at the time, it was a different way of doing networking.
Yeah. So when I was in sales, I mean, I've always stayed in sales, we're all in sales,
Sure.
but when I was selling specifically a product service for another company, I worked my way up to sales manager of another company. And it started to sort of catch on what I was doing, and people were showing interest in my maybe working with them. But it's not that built anything, but it kind of showed me there was something possibly there. But what I did is I attended a seminar and got the person's again cassette tape albums, and at the back of the series they said, if you'd like to make some extra money selling these tapes, let us know. So I did, and they showed me how to speak for free at different civic clubs and organizations, that how to do the 25 or 30-minute talk, and at the end sell the tapes. And from what I understand, I was their leading distributor, salesperson in the country doing it. I don't know how many other people were doing it, but I was doing it, and
Right.
doing well with them. But again, that kind of gave me the idea, I could make a living doing this. It's a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and you feel like you're making a difference, and it's, uh, and so I started um, doing more speaking, actually. But as I was doing so, Jody, I was kind of carving out what I wanted to be talking about based on my strengths and, again, my values, and what the message was that I wanted to get across to an audience. And that's where the networking part came in, because my strength was relationship building.
Mhm.
And that was happened to be something that was not a strength for a lot of people. And so I was speaking for a couple of years on that topic. I had developed my own cassette tape album, and um, I was doing well for a couple of years just doing that.
Mhm.
But then I was at a National Speakers Association conference, and a couple of the veteran speakers said, Berg, you really need to write a book on the topic in order to position yourself in the marketplace, make yourself more marketable. You'll get higher fees, you'll be more in demand, blah blah blah, so forth. And I'm a good student, as you can tell.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I don't try to reinvent the wheel, because I know I'm not that smart. I need to learn from people who've already done it, and then I can apply it and
Right.
put my own spin on it. But I don't usually invent stuff. That's not my strength. Um, and so I wrote that first book, so totally out of utilitarian purposes. It was not because I really wanted to write a book. Uh, I was kind of having fun selling my cassette tape album, so I really didn't want to necessarily write a book. I knew that's a lot of hard work, but I did it because I felt it was something I needed to do. Um, uh, from that point, then the books I wrote after that were more because I felt there was something I had to say that I wanted to share. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so
totally.
it became a difference. So I started out really as a speaker who wrote. And
Mm.
I think over the years, I've become a writer who speaks.
That's an interesting process. So I just want to run back into Endless Referrals for a second, because in that book, I still use your top 10 questions. I mean, hi Kitty. Oh, I
Yeah, we have adopted not adopted, fostering a couple of little kittens, and she was climbing all over me on my desk. So sorry about
Oh,
that.
on the podcast, you're not going to be able to see how cute this
Oh,
baby is, but
yeah, she is beautiful.
she is
Mwah.
so cute, and I love cats too. So
Oh.
we're kindred.
But I unfortunately allowed them to climb all over my desk from the first time the day they got here, and now they kind of feel it's their desk.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Oh, she's
her brother loves Twitter
oh
because I think he loves seeing all the pictures of
oh
people,
funny.
on the thing. So he gets right up to the thing. So
That's
yeah, so
awesome.
sorry about that.
No, I love
Please
this. This is
pardon little Dora's appearance here.
perfect. I love it. So I wanted to just talk about the top 10 questions because I love these questions and they're still really important. And especially your number one question, which is how would I know if someone I meet would be
Oh,
a good prospect for you? And I think
yeah.
as people are learning to build relationships that are transformational
Mm-hmm.
and relational instead of only transactional, those
Yeah.
10 questions are brilliant.
Well, thank you. It really has to do with that shift of focus. And this is what we talk about with the Go Giver. What's the basic premise of the Go Giver? It's that shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, in this context, giving is simply defined as constantly and consistently providing immense value to others.
Mhm.
um, Understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any, woo-woo, way out there, magical, mystical reasons. It really makes rational sense when you think about it, Jody, because, and I know this is how you do your business, that when you're that person who takes your focus off yourself and places it on making someone else's life better,
Mm.
helping solve their problems, bringing them what they want, what they need, what they desire. Well, people feel good about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to eventually, if it makes sense to do business with you personally and refer you to others.
Mhm.
So when we talk about those questions and we talk about, basically about how I define networking, and because we still, and it's, to me, it's amazing that you can still go to many events where people are networking, which, and I imagine me putting quotation marks
Yeah.
around it, where what are they doing? They're glad handing, backhanding, slap handing, sticking a business card aggressively into people's faces to, saying, give me a call, I'll cut you idiot. Not really, but that's pretty much how
Mhm.
they're communicating. They're talking about themselves. They're and that's really not networking at all. I would personally define networking as the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and take, or give and receive, win-win relationship. But the focus is on the giving.
Yeah.
Now, so we start with, so those questions you talked about, this is the first difference maker when you're in a conversation with someone, because you might ask this person, what they do, and they tell you, and they ask you what you do and you tell them. But when you ask them what they do, they probably gave you this big long elevator speech, right? Gary, who sells copying machines, says, well, I'm vice president of sales of Acme Office Products. I sell high-end copying machines to companies who need to modernize, right?
Right.
And so, because that's how people have been taught to introduce themselves. But, I say that when someone, then they ask you what you do because they feel obliged to do that, and you're tempted to give your elevator speech. But here's what I'm going to tell you: don't do that. Don't do that. Not now.
Mm.
It's not the time, because right now, this person's interest in you and your product or service can be summarized really in 3 words: they don't care. Not yet. So by doing that, you're just the same as every other single person who's looking to sell them hats while they're trying to sell you hats. And it just, so instead, what if we can just answer the question, I sell real estate with, or I'm a financial advisor with, or I'm an accountant with the firm of so and so. That's it. Because again, they don't care right now.
Mm.
But we then go back to them
Mhm.
and we invest 99.9% of the conversation with that person, asking that person questions about themselves and their business.
Mhm.
Okay. And so when you ask, the first question, how did you get started? How did you get your start in the so-and-so business? This is not a clever question. It's not a slick question. In fact, it's actually very mundane, right? How did you get your start in the, but people love to answer that question, Jody. Why? Because you're focused on them. You're making them the star. They have become the movie of the week. You're asking that person to share their story of how they got started in the widget selling business. I can almost guarantee you nobody else has ever asked them that question. Their own family members have probably never asked them that question. But here's you, who they just met, who wants to know about them. Now, the next question might be something like, what do you enjoy most about your work? And now probably you segue into that by saying, wow, you must have had some great experiences over the years. What do you enjoy most about what you do? Right. And again, it's just a feel good. I call these feel good questions. Just makes the person feel good about themselves, about the situation, about you. Now, the next question, the one key question, and this is actually not one of these the 10, it's its own separate question. And by the way, and we mentioned 10 questions. You'll never have time to ask all 10 questions during any one conversation. 2 or 3 at the absolute most, right? And that's all you need.
Mhm.
And then the one key question becomes, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good prospective customer for you? Wow. How can I know if someone I'm speaking with would be a good client for you? How can I know if someone I'm speaking with is someone you'd like to meet? I always like to preface it too with the lead in of, Dave or Mary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. How can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good customer for you? And when we ask that question, just the way, first, again, what have we done? We've separated ourselves and distinguished ourselves from everyone else who he can tell or she can tell is just trying to sell them on their own thing. But no, we're focusing on them.
Mhm.
So we're providing exceptional value to them just by doing that. And they're seeing us as people of value. But just the way we ask the question, the response is going to actually help us to help them. I sometimes use the example of Gary, who sells copying machines. And I say, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good client, potential client of yours? And he says, well, if you're ever in an office and you notice a copying machine, and that copying machine is filled to the rim and overflowing with crumpled up pieces of paper, that's a great sign that copying machine's been breaking down a lot lately. And that would be an excellent prospect for me. So Gary has just shown you,
Right.
he's told you how to go to work for him, how to add value to his life. Now, of course, this is just, one step along a whole, along a system, but it's right away shifting your entire focus off of yourself and onto them. And I guarantee you, you're the person they remember from this event. Now, you're not going to leave that to chance. You're going to get their business card, their information, and you're going to go through the follow through aspect of the system. That's fine. But you have just separated yourself from everyone else who that person's met.
Mhm. And this is brilliant, everybody who wants to grow a business or wants to even just grow your network of people you know and trust and like, because you always say, I do business with people who I know,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
trust.
All things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way of eliciting those feelings toward you
Mhm.
than by genuinely and authentically
Yeah.
moving from an I focus or me focus to that other focus, looking for ways to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the Go Giver, told Joe, making your win all about the other person's win.
So you've just now segued into the next series of books, because these are so good. They're novels, or what do they call them? Fables,
Parables, yeah.
parables. And I've got all of them, I believe.
Oh, thank you.
Go Giver Sell More, Go Giver Influencer, Go Giver Leader, the Go Giver, and then It's Not About You.
Well, yeah, It's Not About You actually was the first incarnation of the Go Giver Leader. We
Right.
changed the name of that. Yeah. So
But I
uh,
got that one because it was coming out early,
I
so I had
know.
to
Well,
make
thank you, and I
sure.
appreciate that you did that. We found the title did not really sell very well.
Mm.
And as soon as we switched it to, we changed the a couple things. We also put at the back of the Go Giver Leader a discussion guide and a
Mm.
Q&A
Mhm.
and so forth, and we changed the ending a bit, but it was really just the title.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the
So how did those books come into play? You and John David Mann wrote them together.
Yeah.
They're,
Hmm.
as we said, they're parables. They're, you
Hmm.
get to know people, and they're really, it's just so powerful, because most of us might have been taught in our sales training that you have to be a go-getter, be a go-getter. And this is just exactly the opposite of that in a way.
Yeah, well, what we would say, and of course, it always depends on how you define terms and how you define words. So, if you define a go-getter as someone who's just out for themselves and taking, then we'd say, yeah. But we would rather call a person like that a go-taker, so
Ah,
that we can have a go-getter as someone who just takes action.
mm,
So we say, be a go-getter, be a person of action, right? And combine that with being a go-giver, someone who is absolutely laser focused on bringing immense value to others. Because unless you put action into the mix, nothing's going to happen. But what we say is, do not be a go-taker.
mhm.
That's the person who feels almost entitled, if you will, to take without having added value to the process, to the person, to the situation. And I got to tell you, not only is it a yucky feeling to do business that way, it rarely is sustainably successful. You can have some success doing that, but boy, does it take a lot of work, continuous work. You really don't have people on your side. You don't have people pulling for you. You're just having to repeat the same process again and again and again. And it's just it's a really just a lousy way to have to make a living.
Well, I think some people would think that's what sales is about, transaction over transaction over transaction, instead of building the relationship.
Right.
And, does a lot of that heavy lifting maybe by
Yeah.
bringing people to you because they know you personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of misperceptions about selling, and that's why when people say, "Well, I don't like selling," I think what they really mean is, "I don't like what I think
Yeah.
selling is." If you look at selling as trying to convince someone to buy something that they don't want, need, or desire, well, if you think that's selling, yeah, who would want to do that?
Mhm.
Although that's not selling, that's called being a con artist, right? If they don't want it, need it, or desire it, and you're trying to
Right.
get them to buy it, that's called being a thief, right? That's
Yeah.
no, selling by definition is simply discovering what the other person does need, want, or desire, and helping them to get it.
Mhm.
So if we see selling that way, the old English root of the word sell was salan, which meant to give. So literally, when you're selling, you're giving. Now, someone might say, "Wait, but that's just semantics." Where you're selling, what are you giving? Well, if you're in the sales process, you have a person in front of you and about to do your presentation, right? You're selling. So what are you giving? Well, I suggest you're giving them time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and ultimately immense value.
Mm.
So if we kind of reframe selling as that, now we can really be proud of what we're doing, knowing we're making a difference in the world.
Mm. Wow, we could talk forever, Bob. I know we have some limited time, and I feel like we're just getting going. So I would love to do this again at some point,
Oh,
because
love to.
I love who you be. I love who you are. I think I forgot to mention earlier that I brought Bob to Fargo back in 2013,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's been here other times, I know, but we did an event, a half day event, and we
Hmm.
had a lot of people, and
Oh,
it
that
was
was fun.
really fun event. So Bob is just one of those guys that you're going to want to get to know and then remain in relationship with him. That's how I've
Thank you.
feel about you, Bob. If people wanted to find you, how would they do that? What would be the best way?
Best way is just burg.com. And on that page, there's a whole lot of resources, including the books. They can get a chapter of or excerpt of any of the books to see if they like it first. There's also on the blog, if they dig deep, there's a series on endless referrals,
Mhm.
which takes them through the system for doing so.
Mhm.
Um, and they can connect with me on social media through the website and so forth.
Everything's on your website. Are
Yeah.
you doing any? I know many of us are not doing speaking in person these days. Are you still doing engagements?
Just virtually. And
Mm.
in fact, even after COVID is over, I'm still just going to do virtual speaking. So all my keynotes now for company conferences, whether they're in person or whether they're doing them virtually, regardless, I'm just going to do them virtually. I'm 62 and a half years old. I actually am closer to 63, and I've wanted to get off the road now for a while. And I think if COVID did anything for me, it inspired me that I really do enjoy being home.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so from now on, I'm not going to stop speaking. I love that aspect, but I'll just do it, for the companies who don't mind me doing it virtually from my home right here.
Are there any new books in the works?
No, my business partner Kathy Tajanel and I have put together an online video course called Endless Referrals: The Go-Giver Way. And so right now, that's what we're in the process of marketing and getting out into the universe.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Bob, I have a list of questions, but I'm not going to get to them now because I think we have run out of time.
No, go ahead, Jody.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I just have a couple of questions. We call it the Get Real Speed Round.
Okay.
So people can kind of get to know you a little bit more. So the first question is, Bob, what was your favorite candy from when you were a kid?
It was something called, and I don't even think they have these anymore. It was something called a Sky Bar. Where it was this candy bar that had 4 different fillings within the chocolate. So there was vanilla, there was caramel, there was chocolate, and there was peanut butter, I think, with a 4. And I used to love those Sky Bars.
Did you grow up in Florida?
No, grew up in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Okay. Yeah. So that was an Eastern.
Maybe it was just an Eastern thing.
Cool. What movie would you see, or have you seen more than 5 times?
Fletch.
Oh, really? Why?
Oh, I love that movie. I just thought Chevy Chase was so clever. His timing was amazing. The disguises, the situations and scenarios. It was absolutely my kind of humor.
Nice. Love it. So who was your favorite teacher and why?
It was Miss Cadlick, 4th grade. In fact, in my book, Adversaries into Allies, I actually talk about her, Judy Cadlick. First of all, she's just a sweet human being. I'm still in touch with her.
Wow.
And she's still in touch with my family. We're all, yep. And but she was just a delightful, sweet, angelic human being. And I remember she came to class, and the story I tell in the book is the first day she came into class, she was, I guess, 22 years old. She just graduated college, and this was her first class. And she said, "Boys and girls, this is my very first class. And I've got to tell you, I am scared to death right now." Talk about being authentic, right?
Right.
And it just won the hearts of all of us. She let us into her world. She trusted enough and yeah, she won us over right there.
Even as a 4th grader, you recognize that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, she was really special.
That's awesome. So what would you say is your biggest personal or professional challenge right now?
Right now, I'd say it's the marketing of the new course. Yeah.
So we're going to help you with that. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes. What about your biggest personal or professional victory right now?
I'd say it's our certified Go-Giver speaker program. It's a licensing program we have for people who want to be professional speakers and utilize the Go-Giver materials and so forth. That is just so much fun. And we just add high quality people, and it's a fun part of the business.
Nice. And all of that is available on your website under burg.com. They can get all that.
They can find it. So, the Go-Giver speaker one is gogiverspeaker.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Everybody look for that. And the last question I have, what is one thing people don't know about you that if they knew it, they might feel even closer to you?
Well, I grew up with and have always all my life and continue to have something called OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a chemical imbalance in the brain that makes a lot of life very difficult. It's people generally think they understand what OCD is because it's gotten into the mainstream in terms of, but the washing the hands and things like that. That's such a small aspect. Most people, or they'll say, "Oh, I'm so OCD about," and no,
Right.
they're not OCD about. No.
Mm.
And so yeah, that's my kind of
What does
thing
it
that
what does it cause you to do? I mean, I'm looking at your bookshelf and you can't see this if you're not watching the video of this, but everything's perfectly aligned there. It looks
nah,
fantastic.
that's an obsessive trait with some people. That's not necessarily actually mine. Although I have there's a few kind of annoying things with that in terms, but that's not a big thing. That's more obsessive personality.
Okay.
And obsessive personality is a little bit different from well, it's a lot different from OCD, because OCD is actually a disorder. It's a
Mm.
chemical imbalance in the brain which causes a lack of serotonin and blah 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 and yada 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 and so forth. But it causes very unwanted, horrible, anxiety ridden thoughts, and then it causes compulsions, different actions, as though it will magically undo those. So it's really a whole, it
Wow.
takes a while. But if anybody does believe that they or someone who they love may have OCD, and I hope they don't, but the Obsessive Compulsive Disorder Foundation in Boston, Massachusetts does a wonderful job there. Um, Website is IOCDF, so International Obsessive Compulsive Disorder Foundation
Mm.
is a wonderful, yeah, IOCDF.org.
I also
It is
okay.
a wonderful resource to go to see if maybe that is an issue, and if so, where you can get help for it. Fortunately now, when I was a kid growing up, nobody knew what it was. It wasn't diagnosed till I was 26. Okay.
Mm,
So I lived up till 26 just thinking I was absolutely nutty.
mm.
Okay. But but now, because it's now a known and studied thing, they can help children who have this and make their life a lot more bearable. So yeah, but so that's I don't know that it's necessarily going to make anyone love me anymore, but any more just by knowing it. But that would be something about me that they probably don't know.
No, I love that though, because to me, this is what it means to be real. It doesn't mean everything's always, sunshine and roses. It means that when you are real, you are not afraid to share the things that other people might not know about you,
Sure.
or that might bring people to a place where they can go, oh man, you're so much more relatable than I thought.
Well, Jody, for a long time in my life, I'd say up till I was 40 years old, probably, I did not share that with anyone. I
Mm,
was just very embarrassed about it.
mm,
It's really a humiliating thing just to live with, and
mm,
there's a lot of guilt associated with it within your own mind because you're having thoughts that are very distressing, very
mm,
disturbing, and they don't leave you. And so for a long time, I wouldn't. And then I thought, if I've been given this for whatever reason it is, obviously there's a reason
mm.
that I have it, and part of it is to help other people who may have it to be able to find help, and so forth. So I kind of feel it's my responsibility to
Wow.
to let people know about it.
That's great. I interviewed somebody on one of my interviews a while ago who was just diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. She
Mm-hmm.
said, I didn't know that either.
Right, right.
So recognizing those things that, like you said, you just thought it was you and you had to deal with without realizing it.
Hmm.
And then I love that you're willing to share that for all of the reasons that I've created the Get Real Circle.
Exactly.
So,
Well, you're doing a great service, and you're
thank you.
helping a lot
Oh,
of people. You're providing immense value to the lives of so many people.
as are you, Bob. And that's why I feel so connected with you. And I'm so grateful for your friendship and for what you're also doing in the world.
Thank
So if you haven't read one of Bob's books, he's got many, but they're very, very interesting, fun. And there's a big lesson in there about giving instead of being a taker, as you said. And you can
you.
learn how to connect with people in a genuine, real way. So, Bob, thank you for your time and your wisdom and your friendship and just being with me today.
Thank you, my dear friend. Likewise, appreciate you greatly.
As do I. Thank you so much. Take care. And I'll